Today we are going to talk about how do you handle the pressure or the stress or the anxiety when you have a massive project at hand. Maybe you are building your coaching business, maybe you want to change your house, your country of residence, maybe you want to make more money or dissociate from the job that you don't like anymore, maybe you want to find the partner of your dream, but just some kind of project that is kind of weighing on your shoulders and you are anxious about it, maybe you overthink about it at night and it prevents you from sleeping correctly and deeply, having soothing dreams. So basically this video is more for, I think, entrepreneurs, people who want to build something and the pressure is really weighing on their mind non-stop. So 3 easy steps for this that I think are pretty relevant. The first one is going to be about some sort of dissociation, because quite often, especially for big action takers who are always doing more, action, which in the American success model is pretty common. It's like, yeah, go for it. But also if you're always going for it and taking more action, there's also a moment where your mind may be trying to tell you, no, this is not the right thing, you should do this instead. But if you're constantly going, it may be tough to actually take some step back and analyze from a distance, okay, this is something I have done that is completely wrong and I need to do this instead. Or the reverse, maybe I thought I should do this one thing and I have been, but only like once or twice, whereas I should have been doing it non-stop because that was the one thing to really act upon and double down on. But if you are constantly your head buried into so many things to handle, it's pretty difficult to actually see those small things you need to tweak, change in your schedule, your daily routine, the people you're interacting with, maybe who are the toxic people to get away from. Those things are pretty difficult to evaluate if you're non-stop busy. And being too busy is sometimes a trap that people put themselves into, and it can become an excuse because they're like, oh, I have no time. But also some of the things that you are doing that make you have no time are things that subconsciously you have added to your schedule to avoid thinking about the right things. I'm not saying it is the case for you specifically, but it's something that happens a lot, especially among big achievers, people who can always handle more, who are always successful. That's a pretty big trap that they always add more things to avoid reflecting on the things they should really act upon at this moment in their life. So the first thing is, the first step of this strategy is about dissociating. The classic way I liked to do that back when I was starting, now I just do it mentally, but if it is too tricky to do it mentally, you can do it physically on the ground. So you can just step somewhere in your room, anywhere you go, and you just imagine what is the main thing you are having trouble with. This big project you are building, developing, the thing you wish you could have in the next years of your life or whatever it is, some big project that you really have at heart. And you just dissociate from the main space you are into, and you imagine you can see yourself, you can see the problem. Not that you are the problem, sometimes yes, but not that you are the problem, but the situation in which you are. So what do you look like when you just visualize from a distance? What do you look like when you are in this phase where you are struggling and like overthinking about so many things to handle and so much pressure? What do you look like when you are into that headspace of constant busyness, always having a million things on your mind? What do you look like? And you just see that from the outside. You notice what do you look like from the outside. Then the main question to ask, that part of you, that phase of you that is kind of stuck into the same loops again and again and never getting out of it, you just ask it, tell me what is behind that, or what are you hiding? You just point at yourself, some kind of dissociative paranoia somehow. You just talk to yourself, and you just ask, what is hidden behind that? What is lying there just behind that? Basically what you want is to just have an insight which is easier if you dissociate, because just having the right insight when you're in yourself, in your own stuck state and constantly anxious, this is very difficult. That's what a coach usually is made for. A coach or a therapist is made to give you those insights that you don't really see on your initial anxious state because you're trapped into the problem. So dissociating is a mild way of doing what you would experience with the right coach, the right therapist, even if it's always better to have actually necessarily somebody competent advising you, obviously, but if you don't have the luxury of affording somebody like this on a constant basis, this is a quick exercise I have been doing many times over the years that really helped me to just dissociate and just asking, what is hidden behind that? What is the one thing I'm not acknowledging, or the one thing I'm not clearly seeing? Or what is the one thing that is just too painful to articulate? And you don't need to dig too deep, like if it is some deep trauma, you don't need to go super deep on what happened, but at least having some insight of how can you unload some of the pressure. Basically, when you have a big project, there's always a lot of weight on your shoulders, many things to handle, and we just use these kind of strategies to at least unload some of the pressure, unload some bits of the pressure. Doesn't mean it will completely vanish just by doing that, but at least it will start to give some more clarity and some more open space in your mind to really see what's happening down there. So the next step number 2, if you have been doing that correctly, or maybe you can just jump into this right now if you are knowledgeable and aware enough about your life. The second step is to identify, basically, if you have some loads of pressure on your mind with this one project, there's obviously one thing in your past. It can be very distant, very far away, or it can be something that's happening, maybe that just happened a few weeks ago, or that is kind of currently happening, but it started maybe 6 months ago. It's currently happening now, but it started before. So just the one thing that maybe correlated, the one problem, damage, pain, trauma, eventually, if it is something really deep, that happened, that is linked with the big project you have right now. Typically, when we are entrepreneurs, it is because we want to build something we don't have. So most likely an entrepreneur is somebody who is in conflict in some way, at least in the beginning. Doesn't mean he has to stay in conflict forever, but he's in conflict at one point. I was in deep conflict when I started this whole business here with YouTube. I was in deep conflict with the way society had been preaching and school had been preaching how I'm supposed to live my life by going on a 9-to-5 job. I did that for 8 months. I said, no way, just no way I'm going to stay in that situation. And I did everything I could to get away from it, which by now is done. And then I had to do a lot of mental work to unload and slow down and like, okay, it's done. We don't have to always keep pushing. Calm down. But it took me a while to really get at this phase. So most likely it's normal. If you have a massive project, something big you want to build, it is because there is something in your past that is maybe not a trauma, but something painful, something that has been provoking some pain, some damage, maybe just a little bit, but it's still something that, or maybe somebody, maybe it is one specific person you really hate, or somebody that really damaged you, and you just want to be honest about it. It doesn't mean your project is bad in any way. It just means as long as this thing from the past is not handled, healed from the inside, there's no way you're gonna have peace in your mind. No way. Because that thing from the past needs to be handled. It is good to have those pains and those trauma, because also they are the ones who make us build incredible things. Like the whole situation I have right now, I could have never dreamed of having that if I hadn't been through a really shitty job back in the day. But at some point, those things also need to have some healing inside to move forward without all the stress, the pressure, and the constant anxiety and guilt of I should do more, I gotta go there, I gotta do this. It is just to bring some wellness into your daily life. So the third step with this process is to use those questions. So provided you have identified the main thing you were kind of reluctant about, or the thing from your past that is kind of really troubling, or it's kind of making you anxious somehow because you're trying to escape something in your past, then you could just challenge your mind with, if that thing had never happened, so that main thing that is causing you the desire to change your situation, if that thing had never happened, what would you choose today? instead, or maybe you would choose exactly what you're doing right now, but what would be different about it? Second question, how would it alter your perception of what's truly important and urgent? So in entrepreneurs, we see that all the time, because they are trying to handle the customer acquisition, the SEO, the copywriting, well, I'm not going to go into too many technical terms, but basically they are trying to do everything all at once, and maybe those questions are making you reflect and alter your perception of, are those things, all the things you're dealing with, are they all urgent? I'm not saying they are not super important, but are they urgent? Do you really need to do everything right now? Or are there not some of those things that could actually be handled within the next 3 months, or at least the next 3-4 weeks, without damaging the whole situation? Question number 3, what would you change about your current schedule and behaviors? So obviously, if you keep having exactly the same schedule, the same daily routine, the same morning routine or morning type of a schedule, the same daily night routine, if you never change anything into any of those things, you will just get the same results. That's basic fact about life. Whatever you're doing, if you have patterns, and as an employee, it's less easy to act upon this, but you can still act upon at least what you do at night, or during the evening at least, and on the weekends. But basically, those things you are doing as a pattern, as a habit, habits are really dangerous when you are an entrepreneur or building your own business, because bad habits last for a long time, and since you are alone, there is not really anybody to give you the good process to overcome that bad habit you may have taken. So those habits you have developed for how you spend your morning, how you spend your afternoon, what do you start with when your week is starting, all those habits, just question, challenge, clarify. What would you change about them? Question number 3, what would you change about them if that main big bad thing from your past had never happened? Obviously, you have set patterns and habits and behaviors that came to prevent or to step away from that negative thing that have bothered you at some point. But if that thing had never happened, how would you change that thing, those negative habits, those constant habits of doing the wrong things or not being productive? Would it change or alter anything about it? And the last question, obviously, if therefore all those insights you may have had with those questions, if there was a simple way to make all of them, those insights you maybe just had right now eventually, if there was a simple way to make all of that happen now, what would it look like? So quite often we just evaluate that the main change we want is like extremely difficult, hard, painful, too many things to do, and those questions are there to challenge the evidence that it is that painful. Like I was saying to a friend recently, where does come from the presupposition that everything has to be hard and difficult all the time? I think there is some pride also in saying, yeah, I worked hard, I got this by my blood and sweat. Yeah, but at some point, why couldn't it be simple also sometimes? Like, I don't doubt that everybody has to face challenges that are really tough for them. That's obviously something that's going to happen in everybody's life. But also, why should it always be hard? Same thing about those negative habits and patterns. Some people who have been addicted to pain and suffering and having to move forward to chase their goals, some people like that just can never stop. And they are always trying unconsciously to find the next fight and the next fight and the next problem to handle, especially as business owners. That's something we see all the time. People who never questioned themselves or their motivations or their real problem related with their clients, customers, whatever. Then they just keep the same habits over and over again. And 5 years later, they're like, oh, I'm never growing. I don't know why. Yeah, because you have never evaluated where exactly you have fucked up, or what things were you trying to escape, and what habits have you developed that are actually not really productive in any way. So if that helps, can just use that. Those are some videos I like to make sometimes to make people reflect on some big projects they have or some life matters they may have trouble to act upon by themselves. Just let me know if you like this, and we'll see each other pretty soon.